I do.
It was four clips of the episode, and you can see in the images he wasn't even subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, but he watched your show.
No, he didn't. He watched one guy.
Yeah, have you ever went to those time codes? He was highlighting specific, and I won't name the guest from the guest.
But he did watch your show.
Like this is
so you're saying he watched an episode?
Smear. Sure, but do you understand
come
why?
on.
And he posted about
who was that one guy who watched Majority Report and then commented on what Sam did?
Why do you think that? But this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now?
In today's video, Emma Vigeland destroys Tim Pool on Tim Pool's podcast as their debate over crime, media narratives, and political polarization heats up instantly. Emma Vigeland cuts through Tim Pool's MAGA framing with hard data on inequality, crime trends, and how partisan media twist the conversation. And when Tim Pool tries shifting the debate into culture war talking points, Emma Vigeland pulls it right back to reality with clear evidence-based pushback. So let's dive in and watch how Emma Vigeland shuts down Tim Pool on Tim Pool's podcast.
Look, I've asked you, we have here, I literally just pulled up detransition Wikipedia. We pulled up this study that shows that without intervention, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%.
And here I have general acceptance of standards of care. The overwhelming weight of medical authority supports treatment of transgender patients with GnRH agonists and cross-sex hormones in appropriate circumstances. Organizations who have formally recognized this include American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Family Physicians, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, American College of Physicians, American Medical Association, American Pediatric Association, dozens and
Remember
dozens
when doctors
of
said smoking was good for you? You're not citing science. You're citing government approval.
No, I'm not. I am citing
and that's fine.
What does the government have to do with it? These are medical organizations.
Okay, sure. Fair point. You're citing medical organizations, despite the fact that there have been numerous instances throughout history, in fact, basically all of them, where we've been like, hey, we were wrong about that. Like maybe we shouldn't drink mercury if you get syphilis. But what I'm referring to specifically is if there is no intervention of a trans child, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%, showing the majority of kids are better off not receiving.
No, look, I mean, you're on
blockers.
detransition Wikipedia. I just listed a list of dozens.
Again, he mentioned desistance, not detransition. This is like very important that we nail down what we're talking about.
Yeah, right. What I'm saying is, if you have a trans child or a child who is suffering from gender identity disorder or dysphoria, and you do nothing, there is a 61 to 98% chance they age out of it and grow up and are happy and fine.
That's made up.
It's literally right there. What are you talking about?
On Wikipedia.
At the point of puberty.
No, I pulled up the NIH and you said you can pull up anything. Yeah, so here you go. NIH.gov.
Tim.
Here you go.
Tim.
Are you happy?
Tim.
NIH.gov.
Deal with what I just said about the level of medical organizations. You're saying that they're all wrong and that you have some sort of like special knowledge that you can supersede their expertise.
No, he's not. You're cherry picking American organizations.
And you're making the appeal to authority.
First of all, I just cited one from the Netherlands, but American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and
Appeal to authority. Keep doing it.
I mean,
but not even that.
But I'm not in a medical authority, and neither are you. So why wouldn't you appeal to the authority? All I can do is point to a study and say, "Wow, if this study is true, I'm opposed to this." Right?
But there's also all these European organizations that are getting rid of this specific practice that he's focusing on, which is the puberty blockers, and like for some reason they're not on your list.
No,
which is
we are properly assessing when intervention is appropriate here. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
But why would they suspend in these better healthcare systems in Europe? Why would they suspend this specific practice that we're arguing about?
I mean, you listed Sweden and Finland. They've just elected far-right governments, but
I mean,
but anyway, like again, this is what I'm interested in talking about in terms of politics. I want to create a more equitable society for people. We should have socialized healthcare, Medicare for all. You should talk about that more on your program. You say you're in favor of it. I haven't really seen. I haven't seen much.
When you guys cherry pick stuff to talk about music
we should talk
or
about
whatever,
ending child poverty. I mean, it's funny. You should talk about ending child poverty.
But you could have talked about my position on universal healthcare any one of these times. You never do. Why? It's not going to get traffic for you.
Well, I mean, you don't clip anything about universal healthcare. You should focus more on it, and then we would focus on it.
Watching Emma Vigeland go back and forth with Tim Pool here, you can really see the difference between someone grounding their arguments in actual medical consensus and someone trying to win on vibes and Wikipedia screenshots. Emma's point lands harder when you look at the broader reality. Every major medical body in the US and many internationally has spent decades reviewing clinical data on gender dysphoria. These aren't spontaneous political opinions. They're positions built on peer-reviewed peer-reviewed research, not message board speculation. And yes, Tim keeps bringing up European restrictions as if that somehow invalidates the entire field. But even those countries didn't ban gender-affirming care. They shifted toward expanded mental health pathways while still recognizing that puberty blockers remain safe, reversible, and sometimes necessary. What Tim leaves out is that the World Health Organization, Endocrine Society, and WPATH all still support gender-affirming treatment access because the evidence overwhelmingly shows improved mental health outcomes when properly managed, and Emma's pushback on the "kids will grow out of it" claim is key. That old stat Tim keeps waving around, those studies lumped in any kid with gender nonconformity, not kids diagnosed with gender dysphoria under modern criteria. When you look at updated data using actual clinical standards, persistence rates are significantly higher than what Tim suggests. It's outdated research being weaponized to sound authoritative. What Emma does well here is pull the conversation back to real issues, healthcare access, equity, and actually listening to experts instead of cherry-picked fear narratives. And that's where Tim keeps scrambling, because once you introduce legitimate data, the gotcha arguments fall apart.
Because, like,
what we try to do
when are we going to be
is
like, for no reason,
time,
let's just make a universal healthcare thing?
What we try to do in real time is correct right-wing lies, whether
talk
it's
about
you
abortion a
or
lot.
Dave Rubin or Steven Crowder. We do talk about abortion a lot.
Yeah.
We do.
What's my abortion position?
I'm not sure.
Why? You've not watched any of the 8,000 segments we've done on it?
I do know that you called that 10-year-old case a hoax, a political hoax.
The political maneuvers around it to change the law was a hoax.
Yeah.
Sure. So, well, how do you not know my position on abortion? I mean, you watch the show. You watch at any point. You can see the arguments we have.
I don't have a ton of time to watch all
You
your
specifically covered his episode with the serfs where they talked about it in depth. So it's weird that you don't.
Well, reiterate your abortion position for me, and I'll respond to it. Okay. In what way?
I think Roe v. Wade was the right decision.
Okay.
I think that life should be mandated, should be protected under the Constitution at the federal level, and that it probably does make sense for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, but that means Congress needs to codify it.
Okay, but that's not going to happen, and that's because we don't have
that's a different question.
Because we need filibuster reform. So I'm not really interested in process. I'm interested in outcomes as we get back to, again, the differences that we clearly have here. I don't really care who imposes the right to abortion in this country. I just care that we have a right to abortion in this country, and we don't.
Well, right. Yeah, I think at first when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I thought that it was probably good it would go to legislation because the Supreme Court arbitrarily setting law is probably dangerous. But however, since then, I've looked at it and said, it's a 14th Amendment question, the right to life. And, looking back on that now and understanding Roe v. Wade actually was a pretty good decision. I think now at this point, you'd need some kind of codification. I don't know how the Supreme Court's going to go back on it, but that's a political conversation, not a personal perspective on abortion. So my view is pre-viability, it's individual discretion. Post-viability, it's probably going to require some kind of, depending on the circumstances.
Where do you draw the line of viability?
Can the baby survive on its own?
Okay. Well, 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester, which is the first 12 weeks. Yeah. 99% happen in the first 20 weeks. The rest that happen, the 1% that you're talking about, which is overrepresented constantly for fear-mongering purposes, is the 1% that happen when the life of the mother is in danger or there's a issue with the fetus.
Well, there's no question.
So there's no need to parse and draw arbitrary lines, because what that does is it essentially, especially with rape and incest exemptions, which you speak about, it makes it seem like...
I'm not in favor of incest exemptions.
Okay. The one that we spoke about earlier, okay? I'm not even speaking about your specific opinion about this. I'm talking generally about the notions of abortion. You can't have rape and incest exemptions because it takes so long to prove those cases that it would completely nullify the need for an abortion, because as the pregnancy is going along, you would be unable to perform the abortion in the time that it takes.
When Emma pushes back in this debate, she's tapping into something that's been clear for decades. The real-world outcomes of progressive policy are simply better for people's lives. Take the abortion topic. Tim tries to frame it as a procedural or theoretical issue, but the data is unambiguous. Countries with legal, accessible abortion and strong reproductive health care have lower maternal mortality, fewer unsafe procedures, and better long-term outcomes for families. The United States already has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the developed world, and states with stricter abortion bans see even worse numbers. That isn't ideology, it's measurable public health evidence. Emma's point about universal healthcare fits the same pattern. Countries with universal coverage, Canada, the UK, France, the Nordics, spend less per capita than the US, while achieving better health outcomes across the board. The most ironic part, many of these countries have strong conservative parties, yet universal healthcare is still treated as a basic human right. It's not some radical left-wing fantasy, it's the global norm. And when Emma talks about protecting people from government overreach in private medical decisions, that's backed by overwhelming public sentiment. Polling consistently shows that most Americans, including many independents and moderate conservatives, believe decisions about pregnancy should stay between patients and doctors, not politicians, panels, or talk show commentators. Tim circles around hypotheticals, but Emma stays with what actually happens on the ground. Her arguments line up with the evidence. When you trust people, fund healthcare, and keep politicians out of exam rooms, society gets healthier, safer, and more free.
To prove that kind of stuff. So when that stuff is put into legislation, what it does is it waters down and makes the public seem like, oh, we're not so barbaric. That's why we should not be intervening in what doctors and patients are doing. I want people to be empowered over their own health care. Same thing with trans kids.
So you disagree with Roe v.
Same
Wade
thing
in
with
that
abortion. Sorry?
Do you disagree with Roe v. Wade in that regard?
Well, no. I want there to be an abortion.
Would you prefer Roe v. Wade stood?
Of course.
So then you would be against abortion after a certain amount of time.
I mean, Roe v. Wade essentially created the viability standard, right?
So then you have a 14th Amendment question, whereas you would need some kind of government intervention post viability.
Yeah, I believe that doctors should be able to make these determinations, and it should not be. We should have a right to an abortion broadly, and doctors can make a decision.
To be clear,
real quick, I think you're in favor of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
No, I'm not, because I would never want to overturn something to go backwards and then bring it up to the legislature where we have crazies and Republican nut jobs in the Senate, and there's a filibuster that doesn't provide us with the ability to codify it.
Because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, you now have states like Colorado removing restrictions.
No. This isn't accurate. So Roe versus Wade protected at a constitutional level up to the second trimester for elective abortions, and then afterwards it was up to the states. So like,
okay, so
Colorado could have extended this prior to. In fact, Andrew Cuomo did this before. So like, just to clarify that.
Okay, never mind. I stand corrected. I thought that it was because I remember reading what was the guy's name? He wrote about 14th Amendment kicks in upon viability. And then you have a constitutional right to life and all of these things, and there's questions around that.
Colorado may have passed that law in response to Roe versus Wade, but they weren't prohibited from doing so before. Because Roe versus Wade says, at this point, the states have no issue. It's a constitutional issue. And then third trimester, which is why Roe versus Wade constitutionally is a ridiculous decision, they're like, it's a states' rights issue. Because, the Constitution obviously delegates the trimesters in the 57th Amendment somewhere.
And again, Tim, like the reality is I don't you've been perfectly nice to me here. I don't really care about you personally. I care when you say things that are harmful and wrong, like the hoax statement about
that wasn't wrong. That was an opinion.
It was wrong. It was completely factually inaccurate.
It's not factually inaccurate.
You called it a hoax because you know that your audience is going to feed into it, and then you parse it later so you have plausible deniability about it.
But specifically what I said was, and we talk about it in depth. I think the issue is just you don't watch the show. To be fair, I don't watch Majority Report. But if like I'm not gonna come out here and be like, you said this one time, this one thing. I've not watched the show, so I don't know exactly what you're talking about. But I said, the idea that you would take a tragic circumstance like this and then create a political story, put it out to the super PACs to try and change laws, that's a hoax.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. How about the fact that you called the
grooming event
shooter in the neo-Nazi Texas shooter who watched your program, you called that a false flag?
Because you don't even know anything about that story.
I do.
It was four clips of the episode, and you can see in the images he wasn't even subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, but he watched your show.
No, he didn't. He watched one guy.
Yeah, have you ever went to those time codes? He was highlighting specific, and I won't name the guest from the guest.
But he did watch your show.
Like this is
so you're saying he watched an episode?
Smear.
Sure, but do you understand
come
why?
on.
And he posted
That
about
one.
it.
Who was that one guy who
why
watched
do you
Majority
think-
Report and then commented on what Sam did?
Why do you think that? But no, this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm just wondering why you think that.
What stands out is how Emma's arguments line up with what actual medical and legal experts have been saying for years. When she pushes back on the idea of inserting government processes into abortion decisions, she's echoing the position of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which has repeatedly warned that political interference in pregnancy care leads to dangerous delays, misdiagnoses, and preventable deaths. And that's not theory. States with heavy restrictions have already documented women being denied treatment for miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies because doctors fear prosecution. The discussion about post-viability abortions is another point where Emma's stance matches reality. Less than 1% of abortions happen after 21 weeks, and the vast majority of those involve catastrophic fetal anomalies or severe risks to the mother's life. That's confirmed by CDC data and by multiple studies in the Journal of Maternal Fetal and Neonatal Medicine. So the idea that states need political guardrails here just doesn't hold up. Doctors already operate under strict medical standards, and medical emergency cases simply don't fit into ideological talking points. And when the conversation turns to online rhetoric inspiring extremist audiences, Emma isn't pulling that concern out of thin air. Groups like the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center have shown that algorithm-driven media ecosystems can unintentionally radicalize viewers, especially when hosts frame stories in ways that validate conspiratorial worldviews. It doesn't mean a creator wants extremists watching, but it does mean patterns matter, and responsible platforms acknowledge them instead of brushing them off. Emma's points aren't emotional reactions. They're grounded in evidence, outcomes, and what experts overwhelmingly say keeps people safest. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.